That video. Yeah, that's fine. You just want to talk to them. Yeah. Yeah, no, just. Is that just me? Okay, so don't use that. Don't. No, it should all be done here. Yeah, we had a bit of, because we're having to have somebody to show up. They're going to come on the screen, but I think we're good. Really good. I'm just going to go to the last day. Yeah, that's fine. So it's just on the scene. So it's yeah.
Okay, we'll continue. So we will make a start. This, I do know Mr. Ogborn's disappeared from the screen.
He has to log back in again with the new streaming details, but he hasn't come back.
Yeah.
Okay, is he aware? Sorry,
We've
is Mr.
let him
Ogborn
know.
aware of the situation? And
We've told him, yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
because the reality is that the streaming service, that isn't a participation element. Obviously, you can watch on the stream, but because Mr. Ogborn may or may not wish to participate, I'm quite keen to make sure he is able to log in. Yes, that would help. So we will make a start.
We have now got the statement of common ground on heritage. So if Mr. Phillips could hand up a copy to you, and that would be document I-19. And then secondly, so just to say, we are preparing the site visit itinerary, and whilst that's fresh in mind, we just wondered whether we could address you on the need for private solo or accompanied view. Our position is that armed with a proper map, you can get out on site and see it entirely yourself, with the agreed viewpoints, which will hopefully be agreed between the parties today. The only caveat to that is to get onto the site, you would need to, there's a 5-way gate, which we will pile over in the last couple of weeks. If you're happy to do that, that's fine. And obviously we will let the landlord know that's what's going to happen. If you would actually have no problem with this, because prefer to be opened, one of our team would need to be there to open it for you. And so to that extent, there will be someone from the developer side in broad proximity. We may be able to time it so that they go a little bit clear off, you go through and leave, they close behind you. But it actually, if the council had no problem with someone standing as a security guard, as it were, we could do it unaccompanied, but with someone to actually open a gate for you.
Yeah, I think I probably still would prefer someone from the council there, just to save any.
Okay.
But having said that, I'm more than happy if it's relatively easy to climb over a fence. I've no problem doing that.
So I got over it. It's absolutely
okay.
great.
So I'm happy to do that. So,
yeah.
Are the council? Do you have any views on whether it should be accompanied or unaccompanied?
We're fine. Yeah, we're fine with the unaccompanied.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So we'll go for unaccompanied at the moment. The only way that could change is if an interested party expresses a wish to attend the site visit, and then I'll review the situation later in the week. But I think at the moment, if we press ahead on the basis that it be unaccompanied, and I will scale the gate.
And we will get that itinerary to the council over the course of today, so we can get it agreed and to you first thing in the morning.
Okay, thank you. I have actually, during the adjournment, sent a library of what I think to be the the documents received, so the I documents that have been received in the inquiry. So I've made a short list, and if there's any confusion or dispute over that list, then just give me a shout after one of the adjournments. But hopefully it captures all the documents that have been submitted thus far. Mr. Ogborn isn't on the screen still. Okay, well, I think we're okay to press ahead, because the first site we're going to discuss, he didn't have any discussion about that site yesterday anyway. I think he might be more interested in discussing some of the other matters a bit later on. So let me just check to make sure that I've covered all the other things I wanted to cover. Yes, okay, so can we move on now and look at and revisit the I6 document, inquiry document 6. I've also got inquiry document 18, which is the Kennet Garden Village. And you might have to remind me about this, where we got to with this particular site. From memory, there was a couple of issues. One, the position of the appellant was that the description of development precluded the type of proposal that's before this inquiry in any event. And secondly, there's a planning condition on the outline which restricts the floor space to 4,899 square meters of C2, I think. In addition, so aside from that discussion, there was then a discussion about the wider site, which has prompted, I think, prompted submission of document I-18. So,
Actually, sir, I-18 refers to the consented site.
okay,
The wider
you.
site has fallen out of the picture, as I understand it. We're talking about the consented
Okay,
site.
thanks.
But perhaps if I address you on I-18, because that picks up on the first point that you've just raised, which is what does the current outline planning permission give consent for? And as I say, I'll address this in closings, and I'm sure Mr. Smythe will too. So, but this is just so if the council want to say anything at this stage, they can. We've seen the description of development. We looked at that yesterday. And one of the conditions attached to the outline planning permission, condition 5, I think, requires the scheme to come forward in accordance with the design code. I'll just get that reference for you.
Was this site 11?
Site 11, sir, yeah. Sorry, not 5, where's it gone? Condition, oh, this is condition 6, I beg your pardon. So core document 4.35H. It's one of the appendices to I6. The core document references core document 4.35H. That's your Kennet outline planning permission, and condition 6 of that says that the details that come through via reserve matters have to be in accordance with the design code. And we don't yet have reserve matters for this part of the site. This is the design code. And as I say, it's a matter of ultimately legal submission. But if I page turn this with you, so just so you can get the point that's coming your way in closings in more detail. As I say, this is a 100-page document, and we've extracted everything we can find relevant. Obviously, if the council thinks anything else, that they'll add it. But if you turn to internal page 20, the numbers on the bottom left-hand corner, you can see it's a bit in yellow actually that we've highlighted. Sorry, so past, yes, and it says there, and it refers there to the regulatory plan. So the regulatory plan provides all requirements on a single scalable drawing and must be adhered to in order to achieve the vision. So it brings into play the regulatory plan. And if you turn over the page, you've got a colourful drawing, and you can see in the, well, there's the red bit, and then to the left of that, there's an orangey bit with some numbers 5 in, just to show you what they refer to. If you come back a page, you've got a key, and in section 10 of the key, 10 says frontage character. And then you can see little numbers refer to, you know, section 10, frontage character. So that when you turn back to that plan, number 5, in our case, it's about frontage character, which we'll cross over briefly in a moment. If you then turn past that page and you come to internal page 22, this is, you can see again, highlighted in yellow, instruction manual, how to read the regulatory plan. And you can see that in the middle bit, the middle part of the page, it says section 07, land use. And so if you then turn through that a couple more pages, to, you will see a page which at the top left-hand corner says 07 land use. And again, we've highlighted it in yellow, but the designation, it says an amount of each land use underpins the structure of the new village. The village is the whole thing, obviously. And then you can see again in the key, section 7.3, care home sheltered housing. If you then turn over the page in this document, you can see again, we've put it in yellow, 7.3 care home sheltered housing, a potential location identified for the provision of a care home sheltered housing to accommodate a variety of building types and facilities, design set out in an RMA. Turn over the page, you get to a page about frontage character. In my submission, there's nothing that we need to drop in on that, but just to, it's there for completeness. That carries on over the next page as well, a bit more about the frontage character. If you come down to 5, for example, you can see village centre frontage, that it gives information about how buildings should relate to streets and things like that. If you then turn over to the next page, you get section 11, built form. This is talking about what sort of built form should be in these character areas. And we've got the village core care home sheltered housing, and it tells you what can go in there. And again, you can see in the key top left, care home sheltered housing. In the text beneath that, it says there's a potential area for specialist housing for older residents within easy walking distance. The plan shows how it could be developed with a range of housing types. And then you've got the offer of bungalows and apartments with access to communal facilities, so independent living, to a traditional care home offering support. So again, you've got that that distinction between care home and sheltered housing. And then if you come over the page to Appendix B, the design code and compliance checklist. This is the checklist that reserve matters applications have to adhere to. If you turn over the page to internal page 101, on a page heading appendices, section 7 again is highlighted in yellow. And one of them is, has the applicant read and fully understood the contents of the chapter, and does the proposal comply with the land use element of the plan? So coming back to the point made at the start about the condition tying the design code tying in the regulatory plan, and then a regulatory plan allowing care home or sheltered housing. So that's the point that's coming your way in closing. So we thought it'd be helpful just to dig down one more layer in terms of the consent thus far.
Okay, can I just ask a question about a point that you've just raised? And on page 66 of the document, I-18, the box that you've just referred me to, which starts to the west of the primary street. Reading the kind of the explanatory text, it seems to me that it's looking for, as it says, an area of specialist housing for older residents. But it seems to be quite broad in terms of what it's looking for. I mean, it mentions, for example, a range of different housing types, including a care home, but it doesn't seem to say either way. It seems to offer flexibility.
Consent, something that's outside of what is expressed and stated throughout the plan, what's allowed.
Okay, I will ask the council for the comments in a second. In terms of the condition, do I have the condition in front of me? I've got. Okay.
That's Annex G of
Okay, while I'm getting that document, could you just assist and explain to me what the condition actually says? Does it say in broadly in accordance, or what's the exact wording of?
Details in accordance with
Okay.
the principles secured by the design code. Reserve access application shall include the design code statement demonstrating how that application accords with the approved design code. So condition design code, design code regulated plan in line with the development.
Okay, so your position is, in summary, notwithstanding the discussion that's been had about the floor space, the 4,899 square meters, your position is that the consent does not allow for the type of proposal that's before this extra care housing before this inquiry.
Come back and well, even if it is definitely floor space and look at what could come forward for the primary one, doesn't make sense.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Smythe, any comments on that, please?
Yes, there's one comment from Mr. Phillips, and I've got one comment myself.
My comment is just on page 66. There's the key principles. The sixth bullet point states that larger and taller buildings should be located in the eastern part of the site, close to the village centre. Obviously, that allows a lot more flexibility on how you can design a scheme. So number of floors you have, which means if you are providing the sort of care elements, obviously your ground floor, which you can provide additional elements and then have the sort of flats like Bottisham potentially above that sort of community facility.
And one point from me, it's going back to the point you've raised about the box, which is anticipating a point I was going to make. 2 points to make. Firstly, so how should we approach it? This is a design code. These are not terms and conditions of a contract. So you should read this document sensibly, not legalistically. And I say that reading that box helps the council's case greatly. It's plain that the illustrated plan shows a range from bungalows and apartments at one end to care homes at the other, offering the opportunity for residents to access additional levels of care within the same area as their needs change. Well, that aptly describes what the appellant's offer is to this inquiry. So I say that this design code is compatible with the appeal and does not exclude it.
Mr. Walton, any response to that point?
So you've got the points fair and square between us, and we'll obviously address you that on that further in closings. The point we did want to go on to was the one we flagged a moment ago as well. Even if the council were right, what would this consent potentially, what could be brought forward under this consent by way of extra care housing? We've got the floor space limitation in the condition, which we saw yesterday, and Mrs. Venables has been looking at that overnight to just give you a sense of unit numbers that could be brought forward in accordance with that floor space restriction.
Yeah, in terms of the floor space restriction and the approximate size of a two-bed unit of 85 to 90 square meters, it would look as if the maximum size of that scheme could be around 50 units, which is more in line with a sheltered housing scheme rather than an extra care scheme.
Mr. Smythe, Mr. Phillips, any comments?
There's scope to vary the condition.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments that I need to be aware of? We did obviously discuss the site to some degree yesterday as well. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, just in relation to that last point made by Mr. Smythe, I mean, I think what I would say is whilst yes, technically one can vary the condition, the fact is that the designated plot within the design code and the outline consent is a fixed size. I mean, it is only what it is. And therefore it would seem to us, certainly based on that illustrative plan, that it's probably maxing out what that plot could actually accommodate.
Mr. Phillips, any views on that point?
The only thing I would mention is obviously while the site and the corner design code gives a very specific site, obviously the floor space can be increased or decreased by height of a building. It doesn't require just a plot of land. If you're doing bungalows, obviously that would be a lot less dwellings you could fit on a plot of land, where if you're doing flats, you could increase the density of a scheme. And that's what I was raising earlier on page 66 of the document that's been handed out of the design code regarding the heights a building can be, where it states a larger and taller building should be located in the eastern part of the site, close to the village centre.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Venables. You did mention a maximum size of between 40 and 50 units. Did you have a scale in mind in terms of height when you came to that conclusion?
No, I've used the 4,899 square meters maximum size.
Yeah, sorry, I'm confusing myself actually. So yeah, so your comments were based on the floor size on its own as opposed to the potential to accommodate additional units on the site by varying the condition, which I think is Mr. Phillips's point. You could go higher effectively.
Could I make another point as well? That particular scheme, we would not include in an assessment of need for housing with care because it states that it's sheltered housing or a care home. And I don't think we should forget that there is an identified need in the local authority area for private sheltered housing as well. So it would all be very well to move the scheme across to housing with care. However, there's an unmet need for private leasehold housing, sheltered housing, also in the local authority area. And I can take you to that later. If
Yeah, so I think you probably preempted a question I had actually about the need of different accommodation types. So that's I'm sure we will cover that shortly. No, okay. That's fine. Okay, we'll leave that there. So I think we can close the session on alternative sites. And obviously, I'm sure you refer to this in closings as well. I do want to then move on to another roundtable session, which is effectively on some other planning matters. Let me just find my agenda. So yeah, I have made some notes on this, but the agenda remains as is, although we might actually change the order slightly. I'm sure it doesn't really matter. Everyone's in the room who needs to be here. So what I'll do is I'm going to start with a discussion about the additional plans first. Then I think I'll take a break and then we can discuss the remaining planning matters. So can we start off by focusing on the additional plans, which were documents I 13, I'm guessing there. I can't remember the document numbers. So the plans that were presented by the appellant yesterday as an potential alternative in relation to the pedestrian access. I think it's our documents documents 14 and 15, I-14 and I-15. Okay, and also can we refer to the original plans of the same? So there are two options on the table as far as I can tell. And just an observation actually, which I would have picked up in opening had I have realized at the time. but the proposal, the application is for access with all matters reserved. So where are the details of the original drawing, the access? Where are the access details in relation to the pedestrian route out onto Rowan? Is that Rowan Close? Is it the access to, yes, okay, Rowan Close. Didn't want to discuss the wrong street name. Are there specific details of that access before me? Should there be, given that access has been applied for? I was going to say without putting you on the spot, but I have put you on the spot, so. Yes. But with, I mean, if I look at the General Development Procedure Order 2015, I think it's actually not called that anymore. It's the Development Management Procedure Order. I think in relation to access, it sets out that should include vehicular access and all means of access to and from the site, if that's what's been applied for. Anyway, we can leave that there for the moment and revisit that after the adjournment. I don't suppose there were any comments on that from the council. It wasn't something you've raised anyway, so.
We never objected on that note.
Okay, well, if you could come back to me on that point. So can we look at the revised, or the, sorry, not revised, the additional drawings, which is documents I-14 and I-15. And what I'm interested to understand here is, to what extent does it affect the site's accessibility? And I've had a look, for example, at the design and access statement, which is document CD 1.3C. So that's a core document. And page 27 of that document, I'll give you a few moments to access that document. So page 27 of the design and access statement, CD document CD 1.3C. And I'll just explain my kind of thought process on this. That page of the document refers to, or certainly illustrates the access point, the pedestrian access. Yes, page 27. Hopefully that is the page 27, not the PDF 27. Hopefully I've referenced the yes, okay. PDF page 6 of CD 1.3C. I think it's because the design and access statement was a big document, so I assume it's been split up into 4 constituent parts. So in short, it seems that the design and access statement is obviously covered integrating accessibility into the scheme, and it says that the scheme will provide access to the site that integrates the proposed development into the surrounding area and encourages walking and use of sustainable modes. And I will have to get the document in front of me actually, but there is an illustration there of the drawing effectively with the pedestrian access. So after your comments initially, the appellant's comments in terms of, does the removal of this access, the pedestrian access, does that not conflict with the thrust or certainly the aims of the design and access statement? Does it, are you undermining the accessibility of the scheme for non-motorized users?
So I think the short point is what we've got to look at is whether with that access taken away, there's anything objectionable about the scheme. There may be better ways of doing things, you know, more access points might be better, but the ultimate question is whether without that there's a problem. And absolutely we can identify those issues, but is that comparison, I suppose, between what's lost is one way of looking at it, but ultimately it's what's left. Is that okay or not? And in our view, as Mr. Brown will explain, we think it's fine as with the amendment in place. Okay, Mr. Brown, would you like to explain why you think it's okay?
Absolutely, sir. I mean, obviously, totally agree with what Mr. Walton has just said there. And, you know, plainly, if it is ultimately demonstrated that pedestrian access could be provided, then it's clearly a desirable thing to have. but we don't fundamentally feel that it is an essential thing to have. As you will see, obviously, there is a perfectly satisfactory pedestrian access down to the high street alongside the principal vehicular access road into the site. And my professional view would be that that is more than adequate to suit the purposes of this development. Now, you know, we're clearly dealing with two constituent parts of this development. We've got the affordable housing, where one anticipates, you know, one issue that will be, you know, relevant will be access to schools, but also to other local services and facilities. For the extra care development, obviously the schools are not relevant, but accessibility to other elements clearly is. Now, we have had a look, just taking the schools issue first, if I may, at the impact of not having the Warren Close link, and sorry, the Rowan Close link, yeah, and in terms of that, from the center point of the affordable housing site, so that's the sort of western rectangle within the application site area. The distance that one would have to travel from the center of that site to the school entrance does increase if you go via the high street from about 288 meters to about 591 meters, so just over double. If, however, one was to make the route via Cedar Walk, now Cedar Walk is the cul-de-sac to the south of Rowan Close, and as you will see on your site visit tomorrow, there is actually an access through between two houses on the back onto the site on Cedar Walk, and if you were to go via that particular link, you can just about make it out on the plan that you have in front of you, I suspect, sir, which is it's around about 2/3 of the way down the line of houses, the back onto the site. You can see a narrow cut through. Do you see that? And if you were to go via that route, the 288 meter walk to the primary school increases to 395 meters. So it goes up by about 100 meters in those circumstances.
Okay, could I just pause there
Yep.
just for a second, just so I can orientate myself, having walked up the public footpath up the edge of the site. I wasn't clear, and again, you can assist me on this, that the public footpath outside the red line boundary, would there be access to the footpath from the appeal site?
Yeah, yes, there would. We can create that cut through effectively in line with where that little alleyway is between those two houses. So there is the ability to do that. It may not be a route that would be used in all weather conditions. It's not a surfaced route, so it does have those limitations. But yes, we can create that route through.
Okay, and just explain to me, this is an outline proposal, and so I do understand that, but the access, the principal or the only access into the site now is effectively from the road to the south, which is illustrated as an indicative access road. So would that be a traditional adopted type makeup? Would that be an adopted road effectively?
I think the intention would be that it would be designed to adoptable standards, but we would anticipate that it might well remain as a private road. You will see from the highway drawings that are in the transport assessment, which are also in the pack of drawings you were given yesterday, that we were showing it as a 5.5 meter carriageway with 2 meter footways either side. So you can see that. Certainly on the western side, so you will see that there is a footway there, which is the route that I would expect pedestrians to obviously use in those circumstances.
And at the moment, is there an informal access from Rowan Close into the site?
There's not. No, you'll see when you go there. There's a hedgerow and there is tree planting. So, which was why on the landscape drawing we had shown those trees being removed and that hedgerow being removed to create that link through.
So you say there isn't currently a functional link between the existing site and Rowan Close?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments from either Mr. Smythe or Mr. Phillips?
Yes, start from me. Can we, on the, if you've still got the design and access statement out, if one looks at paragraph 5.1.1, which should be on the following page to where you were to start. the
You have to
discussion.
bear with me. It's just
Yeah, of
simply,
course.
it's reset itself for some reason, which is frustrating. Sorry, can you remind me of the core document number again, even though I've just given that out?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. That's great. It's just, yeah, I have that now. So sorry, the page number again.
It's, what do you want page? Page 32.
Yes, sorry, I have that now. This is the access and movement framework.
Yes, so obviously read it all, but I particularly draw your attention to the second paragraph. An additional pedestrian-only access will be created connecting the site to Rowan Close. The location of this is fixed to ensure good permeability between the site and the existing residential areas to the west. The next reference is in the appellant's planning statement, which is core document 1.2. And it's internal page 19.
Sorry, yes, I'm there. You've got the page yet? Okay.
I'm not sure, should I make my points or do you want to read it first? What's easiest for you?
Either's fine.
Fine. Right, so point number one, the appellant's TA and framework travel plan were predicated on the pedestrian link. Point number two, the fact there is no longer a link means that pedestrian access is less convenient and less direct than it was previously. And the council submits it's therefore likely to be less attractive for pedestrians. And this is likely to mean less walking and more use of the private car. Final point relates to how this change came about. Can we take up the previous inspector's decision letter? It's in various places. I've got it as Mr. Phillips Appendix 2.
Yes, I have that document.
Yes, grand. This won't be controversial. The appeal before your brother inspector included this pedestrian link. And we can see that because it's confirmed at paragraph 10. And the inspector's planning judgment as to the significance is set out at paragraph 78. So you'll see the inspector finds there will be good access to the town because of its proximity and because there are footpaths plural. So plainly the inspector was placing reliance on the pedestrian link. So the short point is that it's the offer now being made by the appellant is a little less attractive than it was last time round because there's no pedestrian link. That's the sum of it.
Yes, okay, and paragraph 78 of the decision then goes on to say I place moderate positive weight on this factor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So your position will be different, perhaps, and I assume you're going to cover this in the planning balance, or you can cover it now.
Yeah, but I think the short point is it's in modal sustainability terms. The council's not saying that the absence of pedestrian link renders it unsustainable, and that's a reason to dismiss the appeal. What the council's saying is the amount of positive weight is diminished because plainly pedestrian access is going to be less attractive, less direct, less convenient.
Okay, that's helpful.
And I should
you.
say finally, the council first heard that the pedestrian link was being abandoned about a week before the CMC. Fine. Prior to the CMC, I think there had been some doubt about land ownership. So the appellant certainly kept the council in the loop. So we're not suggesting the council was being ambushed. The council was told there was maybe a question mark over it. And it was only just before the CMC that it was confirmed that it wasn't being promoted.
Okay, Mr. Phillips, would you like to add anything?
Yes, first of all, I should also mention, because obviously they can't represent themselves, District Councillor Kane and the Parish Councillor, I think, want to speak on this point. I'm not sure if you can see that, sir, so I just want to raise that first. Just on this link that Colin Brown mentioned to Cedar Walk, I don't know the formal relationship of that footpath. It's not part of the public right of way. I'm not sure if it's an adopted footpath. And Walksham itself, it's a very narrow footpath. And during certain times of day, it would not be attractive to many people. Also, what I would like to raise is, again, I'm not saying the development's made unacceptable by this, removal of this footpath, but given what Colin Brown mentioned earlier, it means a child living in the market dwelling on Rowan Close only has to walk half the distance to the primary school that a child growing up in an affordable house next door would have to walk to a school. And given that this scheme already doesn't do best practice of trying to make the housing tenure blind, it just continually weighs against how good this affordable housing has been designed.
I've heard obviously about the affordable housing in particular has been mentioned. Do you say that the concerns relate more or equally to the affordable element as the C2 element?
Well, the C2 element has obviously the primary access points. They can walk down, for instance, and then walk along the high streets. Obviously, they're losing the short cut to Rowan Close. But given what the C2 element is, it's less like they're going to want to go to the primary school, obviously, because they're going to be a much older generation. So the affordable housing is going to be more impacted for the loss of this footpath than the C2 element.
Thank you. And I think Mr. Ogborn does wish to speak. Would you like Mr. Ogborn to speak first, and then I will ask you to come back?
Chris. Yeah, we don't necessarily need him on screen if we can hear him, if that helps the technology.
If you give it a try, but otherwise it's not essential that he does appear as long as we can hear him. But that was an issue as well before, but we could just about hear him before.
Can you hear me now?
Mr. Ogborn, can you hear?
I can hear you.
Me?
Can you hear me? I'd like to speak if I could.
Yes, if we could try councillor Kane.
Okay, can you hear me now, sir? Can you hear me? No.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you too. That's what I was going to tell them. You don't-
Councillor Kane or Mr. Ogborn, could someone try and speak, and we'll see if we can
we are both
interact.
speaking. We're both speaking. We are both speaking. We can hear each other.
Okay, Councillor Kane, I can see you now. It's just we can't hear you. So we
Yeah,
are, the council are working to try and resolve the issue.
Yeah. We are, but I am speaking. I'll keep speaking.
Okay, that's great. So Councillor Kane, we can hear you now, so we will take this opportunity for you to put your points across. I will just add that I did hear from you yesterday, so it's more about if there's anything else you wish to add, but
Well,
go ahead. If there are any comments to make.
I only wanted to speak to say I could hear Councillor Ogborn. Can you now hear Councillor Ogborn?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear Councillor Ogborn now.
That's excellent. I think when you visit, I'm fortunate I've been able to rearrange things so I can join you at the site tomorrow, which is excellent, tomorrow afternoon. But I think if you go and visit the little cut through from which they're referring to further down the footpath, you'll see it's quite a narrow little footpath, completely different from the sort of access being provided from Rowan Close. You'll struggle to wheel bicycles through it very easily. It'll not be very easy to, I mean, you could get a bicycle through it, but it's quite a narrow little path. And it will be definitely a much less attractive way of accessing the Park Estate and to go to the primary school for any students. And I'm pretty certain that for secondary school students who would have gone round the back of Beechwood Avenue and accessed what is going to be a greenway up to the secondary school in the next couple of years, I think they'll be tempted to go straight onto the high street and try cycling down the high street, which will not be a very safe means of access to the school. So I think you'll see, I think that this loss of Rowan Close access has, to my mind, completely changed the whole offer. In terms of what it's offering the residents, and also the access. I mean, part of the benefit of having a play area there would be the access, easy access from residents of the village through a very safe area like Beechwood Avenue into the play area themselves, which of course is going to be much more complicated and not so easy through this very very narrow cut through. I hope that makes sense.
No, that's helpful. Thank you, Councillor Ogborn. Did Councillor Kane wish to speak, or was it a case of trying to flag Mr. Ogborn? No, I think that's fine. Okay, we'll move on. So could I just, there's a couple of points, well, quite a few points being raised there by the council, and Mr. Ogborn's just raised a couple of points as well, and I had a few. But in short, and to the appellant, does the change, do the revised drawings diminish the positive weight that should be attributed to the site's accessibility? And could you also consider the reverse situation, which has been touched upon by Councillor Ogborn, insofar as there is an area of public open space being proposed as part of the scheme, an extensive area. does the accessibility of that space, is that diminished by the loss of the access in the northwestern corner of the
Thanks.
site?
So yes, Mr. Brown's going to give you some measurements and no doubt a response to both those points in a second. Could I just capture the position that we are at by way of common ground? Nobody is saying that the removal of this access means the scheme is, that there's a policy objection to this scheme in accessibility terms. It's what you've heard from both the council and third parties is a comparison with what was previously proposed. You know, as Mr. Smythe said, it's a little less attractive in that sense, but there's no assertion by anybody that it's becomes unsustainable. But yes, if Mr. Brown can pick up on the measurements and then the points about whether the weightings change, both in terms of getting out of the site and getting back into the site for the open space.
Thank you. Yeah, I've obviously run through the distances for the primary school. I was also just going to touch on the point about the secondary school, and then I'll make a general point, I think, about access to schools. As far as the secondary school is concerned, if you just want to make a note of these and bear in mind that a number of the services and facilities within Bottisham are on that route between the site and the secondary school, which is obviously at the western end of the village. The via Rowan Close, were that link to be provided, that is about a 1.1 kilometre distance. If one were to go via Cedar Way, it would be around about 1.38 kilometres from the site, from the centre of the affordable site to the secondary school. And that would be via Beechwood Avenue, which is a loop road which connects the high street at two separate points. So you will see when you're in the area, if you haven't already noticed this, that Beechwood Avenue is obviously a loop road. And via the high street, the distance is 1.41 kilometres. So I would say in both instances, the additional distance is really very, very modest indeed. I would also just draw attention, I know it's not a core document, sir, but you'll be familiar with Manual for Streets, which is often quoted in this area. We can make it a core document if that's helpful, but what Manual for Streets tells us in terms of walkable neighbourhoods, and there is a section in there which is section 4.4 of Manual for Streets, and it basically says that walkable neighbourhoods are typically characterised by having a range of facilities within 10 minutes, which is up to about 800 metres walking distance of residential areas, which residents may access comfortably on foot. However, this is not an upper limit, and the now obviously deleted PPS 13, for those of us old enough to remember PPS 13, states that walking offers the greatest potential to replace short car trips, particularly those under 2 kilometres. So I think the point I would make is, in accordance with Manual for Streets, all of the distances that I have quoted, you know, from the centre of the affordable housing site to the primary school, to the secondary school, to all the amenities and facilities in the village within, between, those are all within that 2 kilometre walking distance. And similarly, the reverse position that was just referenced about access to the public open space, you know, the same consideration applies. I think the other thing I would also just add, and I know Mr. Phillips put into the statement of common ground the relevant planning history of the affordable housing scheme off Bell Road, where it's an allocated site, 50 dwellings have been granted on that particular site. That will have a longer travel distance to the primary school than the appeal site. And yet that was not obviously seen as a reason not to grant permission for that affordable housing scheme, with the many benefits that it actually brought. So I think in summary, what I would say, I said this already, you know, clearly it would be ideal if we could have the access through from Rowan Close. We don't have that access, it would appear. I mean, that may change, but at the moment we have to assume that it may not be deliverable. And therefore, you know, it is a slightly less attractive proposition than it might have been, but there is nothing that would indicate that these walking distances are not acceptable. And I don't think there's any evidence before this inquiry that use of the high street brings with it any safety issues that are not encountered anywhere else in the village. You know, there's no evidence before you to say that walking along the high street is problematic. So I think that's probably all I'd say on that. Can I just also very quickly raise one other point? You asked about the road.
Yes, before you go on to the road, and also could you address the residents using the public open space that's proposed? If will that diminish the accessibility of that space? But before you do that, I did ask the council the same question. In terms of the weight the previous inspector attributed to the accessibility, I think that was moderate positive weight. Is your position the same, or has it changed as a result of the additional plans?
I really don't think there's much in it, sir, to be perfectly honest with you. I think the accessibility is still good. I don't think, you know, this is a location within the village that, you know, renders it inaccessible to anything in the immediate area. So as I say, it is slightly less desirable than we had before, but I don't think it's a problem, and I think the weight remains as before.
Okay, would you like to make the second point as well, please?
So you asked also about the public open space and whether or not it makes it, you know, harder for residents to access that, and therefore whether that sort of weight changes. I would say no. You know, most of the village is going to be within a 2-kilometre walking distance of this particular open space, this generous area of open space that is being offered. You know, I don't think it has any real bearing, to be perfectly frank, on that. And then my other point was just, I have had just some instructions saying in terms of the access road, as I said, it would be designed to adoptable standards, and it could in principle be adopted to the point of entrance into the extra care element. So you could adopt everything bar beyond the entrance point to the extra care development. Those are obviously decisions that would need to be made, but that's in principle what could be done.
Okay, thank you. Just the manual for streets is not in front of us, so I don't intend to spend any time going through that document. But obviously the National Design Guide is a publicly accessible document, and I'm not going to refer to it directly, but I would surmise that it promotes good accessibility, and that's not necessarily dependent on distance on its own. There are a variety of factors that influence whether a site has good access and desirable access. So do you have any comments about the qualitative accessibility, notwithstanding the distances that have been referred that you've referred me to? Is there anything else you'd like to say about that?
Well, I think just that, you know, I mean, I've walked around the village as part of, you know, this particular application process. I've walked from this site into the centre of the village, and I think in terms of footpath provision and ease of moving around, I think it's absolutely fine. I have not experienced high levels of traffic in relative terms. Clearly, there are peaks at certain times of the day, as there are in any village. But I would say qualitatively, you know, whether one uses the high street, and obviously a number of people might use the high street in any event for other reasons, but whether one uses that or, you know, the previous route via Rowan Close, I mean, I just really don't think there's anything in it, so.
Okay, I won't spend too much longer on this point. I will ask the council to come in shortly. Mr. Ogborn did mention the greenway, and that's probably the wrong terminology that I've just used. I have seen that in the evidence somewhere. Could you point me in the direction of and I'm calling it the greenway, and I don't think that's actually what it is called. Okay, right. There is a plan somewhere which shows where that is in relation to the site. I wondered if anyone could just help me identify that document. Is Mr. Ogborn online? Yes, okay. If he might be able to point me in the right direction. Yes, it is a map actually that I've seen, and I can't recall exactly where that is. It's in one of the, I think it might be in one of the core documents at the end.
It might be. This is something the parish council sent me yesterday, which shows the greenway going from Drive up to Village College. I can show you the map. This was something sent to me by the parish council last night.
It wasn't something that was necessarily, it wasn't sent by the parish council, actually. It was in, I saw it last night in one of the documents, and I just cannot recall where that was. But I was just going to ask for comments on the relationship between the site, the potential amended access, and the green link. Mr. Ogborn, would you like to come in on this point?
Yes, I don't know which document you have.
No, of course.
I did send through a rather poor handwritten map. Yes, we're in the process of discussing with the Greater Cambridge Partnership a greenway, which is basically designed to improve cycle access coming from Cambridge through Bottisham. And as part of that, we've agreed with them that from the other end of Beechwood Avenue, which you should be able to see on the handwritten map that I sent through yesterday to Andrew, there will be a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit all the way up past the village college from the other end of Beechwood Avenue, where it comes into the high street, where it joins the high street. I don't know whether you can see that. Can you see that?
Well, that material isn't before the inquiry, unless I'm
right. All right. Okay. So I mean, this is all happening as we speak. We're in negotiation. This is we're almost at the end of the design process. The point I was making is that if the Rowan Close access was available, cyclists going to and from the play area, or maybe leaving the social housing, the affordable housing, would go down Beechwood Avenue and then come straight onto a high street that's designed for cyclists. Whereas if, as is likely, we don't have access by Rowan Close, cyclists either leaving the affordable housing on the new development or coming to play along the play area will almost certainly choose to go down a 30-mile-an-hour high street, which has got no provision for cyclists. There's not a greenway. It's got there's no pavement you can cycle on. And so they'll be using a more dangerous access point to get onto the site. Whereas with the Rowan Close being available, there was a very safe access around the back of Beechwood Avenue down to connect with the new soon to be created cycleway or greenway we call it, up past the school. I hope that makes sense. You probably, without seeing the map, it's quite hard to understand.
No, it's okay. I think I know where the map is. It's in the transport statement.
Yeah, Appendix B of the transport statement, which is core document 1.25.
Yes. So we do have a copy of said plan, which does show the greenway and the relate. Well, it does show where that would route from and to.
Yeah, and so you'll see where, by reference to that, where the appeals site is, in very broad terms, where you see the number 7 and the line through to the box with Bell Road in, that line points broadly towards where the site is. And so the point being made is that if residents could come out of the originally proposed access, they'd loop round the top way to then drop down onto the greenway, whereas the suggestion is that with the newly proposed access, they'd come down and go down the high street. That goes to Mr. Brown's point, which is, well, obviously some people would be doing that anyway, but in any event, the fact, even if they did that, there's no suggestion that would bring in a highway safety issue or anything problematic like that, which is of course common ground with the council.
Okay, thank you. Well, just in terms of the references, the document I have is CD 1.24, and I think it's Appendix B.
Right.
Has there been a change in numbering or? Okay. Okay, so we're looking at the same thing. Yes, okay, thanks. Okay, Mr. Ogborn, would you like to come in hopefully one final time on this point?
Yeah, yes, so I'm sorry, and I will make it the last point. Yeah, I don't know what the document that you've got in front of you is, but there's been an updating, just so you're aware. So on the document you have shown the greenway, the that we've actually got agreement with the Greater Cambridge Partnership that the Greenway will extend a bit further than was originally planned to right up to the entrance of Beechwood Avenue. So I don't know quite what your document will show you, but if they come round the back of Beechwood Avenue, they'll come straight into a Greenway immediately, whereas that wasn't the original plan.
Okay, you have to remind me which is Beechwood Avenue. Obviously not easy when you're not on the screen, but I'm looking at the council or the appellant maybe to just help me out.
That's the one that, if you're looking at this Appendix B document, it's the one that loops round the top. I'll come over and show you. So
I think I understand, but you could, by all means, if you'd like to show me. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ogborn. Any comments from the council?
Again, making it clear, there is no reason to refuse the application from our perspective on this basis. Obviously, the merits of the application should drop because now the site is more divorced from the rest of the settlements. You've lost one of the access points. And also that impacts, as people have raised, how people access into the village and how the village would access the benefits of the site. Why, again, not really for refusal. Most major application sites do seek to have an emergency access in case the main entrance is blocked. So obviously, if you don't have the secondary access road close, you would lose any potential for emergency access alternative arrangements.
Okay, that's a new point as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's only
Philip,
because
so-
when Colin Brown was mentioning, good guidance and how you design roads, I remember that highways usually ask to ensure there's two access points for large development sites.
Well, on this point, one of the questions I had, hopefully one of the next questions actually, because I think we've covered most of the other topics. Have the Highway Authority been consulted on the revised plan?
Not by us.
No, okay.
No, not by us either, no. I mean, in relation, can I just very quickly pick up on what Mr. Phillips said there? Rowan Close was never intended to be an emergency access. And the Highway Authority, when they were consulted on the original application, did not raise an issue with that. They didn't say there had to be a separate emergency access. So as far as we're concerned, that's a non-point.
Okay, but we don't know what they think about the removal of the pedestrian access. Thank you. Any other points? Because I'm hoping we can move on.
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I think we should take a short break because when we come back, we will move on to the main points of the agenda, which is to go through the topic areas that are highlighted on the agenda. So Greenbelt, character and appearance and need, and then a discussion about heritage. Actually, before we do leave, let me just make sure. I had a list of questions and through various means they appear to have been answered, but I just want to make sure that I've not missed anything. Okay, thank you. One point I was going to make, can you, when drawing up the itinerary for the site visit, it's going to be beneficial for me to see this access or this route through to the estate adjacent from the public footpath. So if you can highlight that on the map as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Brown? Are we okay to adjourn? Okay, we'll adjourn. It's 11:15. We'll adjourn until 12:30. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Well, we haven't resolved
We're
that
not
yet.
sure yet.
I think we will resurrect that point.
I'm still happy with Rich going on.
Well,
Yeah, we
exactly,
are
but-
as well.
I've jumped that profile fence.
Yeah. And the fact that the third party would like to go on site, well, if it's not being accompanied, then that's.
Then we'd have to go.
They don't, well, no, they don't get the option of saying, I
Oh,
want to
right.
come on the site with an inspector, because they can't say anything to the inspector.
Exactly.
So, I think we should, quietly discourage them. If we can, behind the scenes, if you guys can just get an estimate, if we're proposing to unaccompanied, is that okay? Maybe they'll back down.
Would it be sensible to maybe let them see the route map?
Yeah, we'll say we'll
So
share that with
We'll
them.
share the route map with them, and if they've got anything they want to add. to
Yeah,
it, then they can
perfect.
add to it, can't they? Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then if they've got any particular thing they want them to look at.
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay, are we all ready? Make that past? Okay, good. So we are now opening the roundtable session on, I've entitled it Other Planning Considerations. Very briefly, just to explain what this session is about, because this is an appeal against non-determination, and as several topic areas are not contested by the council, and also given there are objections to the scheme, I would like to spend a bit of time understanding the scheme and some of the arguments put forward in more detail, as well as exploring some areas of potential concern. So as we go along, please, as you've done already, please refer to core documents or inquiry documents just to help with the discussion. So I am going to start briefly with a discussion about Greenbelt, and I don't really have a great deal to say on this topic area. But I was going to, it's probably easier to refer to the Greenbelt proof. And my question really on this area in general is, and we did hear this in opening as well, that the scheme, the height of the buildings, the maximum height of the buildings has been reduced from the original scheme, which was 12 meters, to this scheme, which is up to a height of 10 meters in relation to the C2 element. Does that make any difference to the conclusions drawn in relation to the impact on openness? And it's probably easier actually to refer to section 5.5 of the Greenbelt proof. No, sorry, the Greenbelt assessment. Or is that the proof, actually? Sorry, I might have titled the wrong document.
I think it is
here.
the assessment, sir.
Yes, okay. So 5.5 of the Greenbelt assessment. And also I've had regard to the previous inspector who's come to his own conclusions on the impact on the Greenbelt. But I'm particularly interested to understand. So the first question is, does the height make any material difference to the overall impact on openness? Secondly, the previous appeal inspector concluded that there would be a significant loss of spatial openness and a moderate loss of visual openness. And I think the conclusion of the Greenbelt assessment in section 5.5 says, in short, that there would be a moderate degree of harm through loss of openness. Is this the same as the conclusions that were drawn by the previous appeal inspector? So there's kind of two questions there.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, so to take the first one, obviously the reduction from a maximum 12 to a maximum 10 meters potentially reduces the overall quantum, the scale, the spatial quantum of development, and in that sense would reduce the potential harm to in terms of the spatial aspect of openness to a degree. But in terms of the thresholds that are adopted within the Greenbelt assessment, which are set out in section 3.4.5 of the GBA, where I defined a scale of harm ranging from major through moderate through minor to negligible. The change in maximum height on the parameters doesn't change where we end up within those thresholds on that scale. Yes, so to move on to your second question, sir, and just to set a little bit of context for the inspector's finding, right at the beginning of his Greenbelt section, it's actually an unnumbered paragraph immediately above paragraph 40 of his decision. He sets out, he says, I've adopted the following ascending scale in terms of weighting: limited, moderate, significant, substantial. He, as you said, found significant harm in terms of the spatial openness of the appeal site and moderate for visual openness. So both of those sort of sit in that middle range on his scale, and certainly neither of them did he classify as substantial. On my scale, an overall finding of moderate similarly sits at the midpoint. It sits below major, which is the top of my scale. My view, and I think the topic
specific statement of common ground confirms this is agreed, is that we're saying that the findings of the GBA are consistent with the findings of the previous inspector.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Yes, the statement of common ground, there is no difference between the parties on the Greenbelt harm side of things. So I'm not going to, unless the council want to add anything. I don't really need to go to the council on this point.
Well, sir, actually, if I could raise a point, within his proof, Mr. Phillips in a number of places alleges substantial harm in terms of Greenbelt openness. And actually in a couple of places, he says that the previous inspector found substantial harm. Now, in relation, I believe that is incorrect in terms of the inspector's findings. I haven't identified that within the decision letter. So if I could venture through you to ask Mr. Phillips to confirm where, if anywhere, the inspector did find substantial.
Okay, thank you. Well, yes, I'm not sure whether I'll ask Mr. Phillips, but there might be some cross-reference or speaking at cross purposes or referencing at cross purposes in relation to weight and harm.
Yeah.
Because I know that obviously the framework refers to substantial weight, but I will ask Mr. Phillips.
Yes, of course. The inspector, and it's in my committee report as well as been proof, I would imagine. The quoting I was giving, I'll read it out. The previous inspector came to a well-defined conclusion when concluding the proposal would harm Greenbelt permanence and openness and would encroach into the countryside. It therefore fails to comply with policy EMV 10 of the LP, the local plan, which requires that development does not harm the openness of the Greenbelt. As directed by paragraph 148 of the framework, I give substantial weight to the proposal for inappropriate development and to the harm to the Greenbelt, essential characteristics and purposes that I have identified. So that's the previous inspector. So basically, I'm really concluding the previous inspector, I agree with that assessment because it's harming the openness and permanence of the Greenbelt, it causes substantial harm. And it's inappropriate development by definition.
Yes, so I think there's a distinction between harm and weight in that there could be, and we'll cover this actually in heritage as well. The amount of weight there is, it then needs calibrating in terms of the amount of harm there is needs calibrating in terms of how much weight you give to that harm. The framework says that any harm to the Greenbelt should carry substantial weight, which means that no matter how much harm there is, you should give that harm substantial weight. But it doesn't sound like you're contending the position anyway that's set out in the statement of common ground. There isn't a disagreement on this point, is there? So I don't think a discussion on this will take us much further anyway. Yes, okay, no, that's fine. But the statement of common ground sets out the respective positions and there's no disagreement on that. So I think I can take that as read without spending any more time on that topic. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I don't actually, there aren't any other questions on Greenbelt that I have. I wanted to move on really to look at need in particular. So Ms. Venables, are you prepared, ready? Don't worry, I'm not cross-examining, so don't worry. So no, it's obviously read the proofs and we've made throughout the inquiry references being made to different types of housing for older people in particular. Now this scheme is private housing with care, but it can also be referred to as extra care. Is that correct? And following on from that, it's probably worth answering the second question as well. Can you just talk me through, and there is a table in your proof which is helpful, but can you just briefly talk me through the different types of housing, specialist housing for older people, please?
Of course. First of all, I just want to take you to my proof. I'm just going to read through a couple of paragraphs which I think are really important in terms of what this particular scheme is. I'm starting at paragraph 3.2 of my proof. Subject to the operator's model, the retirement care village would provide a central core building together with communal facilities to include, inter alia, a coffee shop, cafe, restaurant, shop, and a variety of lounges and areas for social activity. It will also incorporate a range of health and wellbeing facilities to include a spa, gym, treatment and consulting rooms, hairdressing salon, nail bar, all sorts of things that I think will be appealing to older people. Paragraph 3.3, the core building will provide the base for the Care Quality Commission, that's CQC, registered on-site domiciliary care provision, which will be available to the surrounding private housing with care accommodation on a 24-hour basis, 7 days a week. A care village offers potential residents the option to right size, I say that rather than downsize, but to right size from their previous home into private housing with care within a purpose-designed community setting to better suit their needs as they age, in the knowledge that should their care requirements change, their home hopefully won't have to. I think next it's important to go to the NPPG, which is CD 4.8. To provide you with an analysis of the different forms of care. And I'll take you to paragraph 10 of that document. It states, paragraph 10, what are the different types of specialist housing for older people? And it runs through 4 different types. The first type is age-restricted general market housing. Well, we're not talking about that in this scheme at all, and that usually applies to over 55s. The next type is retirement living or sheltered housing. And again, that is not being provided at this scheme. Retirement living or sheltered housing usually consists of purpose-built flats or bungalows with limited communal facilities such as a lounge, laundry room and guest room. It does not generally provide care services, but provides some support to enable residents to live independently. This can include 24-hour on-site assistance, like an alarm, and a warden or house manager. And I think we referred yesterday to sheltered housing and indeed this morning to sheltered housing. There is no on-site 24-hour care provision within sheltered housing. This particular scheme is extra care housing or housing with care. This usually consists of purpose-built or adapted flats or bungalows with a medium to high level of care available, if required, through an on-site care agency registered through the Care Quality Commission, CQC. Residents are able to live independently with 24-hour access to support services and staff, and meals are also available. This is the important part. There are often extensive communal areas such as space to socialise or a wellbeing centre. In some cases, these developments are known as retirement communities or villages, and the intention is for residents to benefit from varying levels of care as time progresses. So that is what this scheme is intended to be. It's a retirement care village. And finally, I'm just going to take you on to residential care homes and nursing homes. These are a different form of care and accommodation. Just so you're aware, I also provide need assessments for care homes, nursing homes and dementia care homes. And these are very different. These have individual rooms within a residential building and provide a high level of care meeting all activities of daily living. They do not usually include support services for independent living. This type of housing can also include dementia care homes. And just to confirm, it is the building itself, the residential care home or nursing home, which is registered by the Care Quality Commission. So it's very different to people's own homes in the proposed community, which are their own homes. They are private units where they buy care in from the on-site registered domiciliary care agency. And just to confirm, it is agreed between the parties in the statement of common ground for need that this is not a care home. The proposal is for a retirement community. Finally, just to make the point, in the local authority's own document, which is CD 4.4, the housing needs of specific groups, You don't need to go there, but on page 190, it sets out the specific types of care and accommodation, and that is the same as the NPPG references.
Yes, actually, I probably will go there because it might answer my next question. So, sorry, was that page 190 of
Page
4.4?
190 of the
So this is CD 4.4, page 190.
that's correct. On page 190, it sets out definitions of different types of older persons accommodation, and it's provided the 3 that I've just read through in the NPPG. In fact, it states source PPG at the bottom of that page.
Yes, okay, so you might be able to refer to this document, so I will leave it open. But following on from that question, I'm not entirely sure reading the proof, and it might well be in there. Trying to get a handle on the need for specifically this type of accommodation, because the planning practice guidance headline talks about specialist housing for older persons, and there being a significant, might not be a significant, critical need, but obviously that covers different types of housing, as you've alluded to. So how, and the focus of the needs assessment here has specifically been on this type of accommodation. So can you just talk me through why this type of accommodation is needed, any more so than other types of accommodation? Do you know the needs requirement of the other types of accommodation, for example?
Yeah, I think it's worth taking you to the document provided, or the 2 documents provided by Cambridgeshire County Council. Cambridgeshire County Council Adult Social Care Commissioning. It's their remit to ensure that there is a suitable supply and provision of a variety of types of accommodation and care for older people. I'll take you to 2 of their documents. First of all, district demand profiles, which is CD 4.9. And page 7 of that document, unfortunately, the pages aren't numbered, but it should be your, it should be your page 7 on screen. It's headed Commissioning Strategy.
Yes, I have that page.
Okay. The second paragraph, I'll just read that through. It's Cambridgeshire County Council and Peterborough City Council. They are the commissioning, adult social care commissioning for all the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough local authority areas. They prioritise the importance of supporting people to remain in their own homes. Where this is not possible, we strive to help people to remain independent through housing with care solutions. Whilst recognising the part which traditional care homes will play, we wish to explore alternative housing options which may offer better outcomes for people.
Okay, so this is a joint strategy between the 2 authorities, between the County Council and Peterborough City Council.
That's right, that's in their adult social care commissioning role. And then if you move on to pages 10 and 11 of the same document. Then I'll take you to pages 10 and 11 of the same document, which is their strategy for East Cambridgeshire. And page 11 is the important one. Under 2021 to 2036 service developments, the second paragraph there starts, there are 556 CQC registered care home beds in the district, of which Cambridge County Council commission approximately 40%. and the CCG a further 23%. Without going into detail, the CCC, Cambridgeshire County Council, will commission bed spaces for those people who do not fund their own care. We forecast total registrations will rise to 631 beds within Cambridgeshire County Council, with Cambridgeshire County Council retaining its proportion of commissions. This is lower than the rate of growth in population due to some of the expected demand being met by other care types. Then on to the following paragraph. Some of the demand will be delivered through increases in domiciliary care provision for those aged over 60 years. So they're looking at changing the requirement to help people living in their own homes. And then it goes on to the following paragraph. The remainder of the increased demand will be met through greater uptake of housing with care services. This will see the introduction of independent living services tailored to people with high dependencies and dementia. And that's the high dependency dementia for independent living. It will also see a rise in the total number of extra care units to 318 units. Presently, there are 154 units of extra care provision across 3 streams, with Cambridgeshire County Council commissioning the 24/7 care. It's difficult to understand exactly which of those 154 units that they're actually commissioning at the moment. It seems to me as if they are only looking at the affordable schemes, and they have not included in this analysis the one private scheme in Ely. And in terms of the history there, in the past, before the 2014 Care Act, the County Council's remit, the adult social care, would only have been for people whose care they fund. But now, since 2014, their remit is to ensure that there is adequate supply for all older people and not just those people whose care that they would fund.
Okay, thank you. So that obviously that document's helpful. So you use that document as well, but how have you identified the need within the district and the market catchment? So if we perhaps can move on to the proof, which I know there's a table in there, but if you could talk me through that as well, please.
In the proof, you're looking at the need table, I think on table T4, page 5, paragraph 5.19.
Yes, I think this is the same table that's in the statement of common ground as well.
It is, yes. The information about how we assess the need in that table is all contained within section 5 of my proof, and I'll just provide a brief analysis for you. First of all, to confirm, this analysis of need is for private extra care only. There will be separate provision rates applied to the analysis of need for affordable extra care. We base our need analysis on the operational year, or the likely first operational year of the proposed scheme. And in this case, because our original need assessment was completed earlier on this year, we are working to 2026. My proof updates the earlier need assessment, which was provided in the CD 1.11, which provides full details of how we undertake the analysis. And just to confirm, very little has changed in East Cambridgeshire. We apply prevalence rates based on the housing in later life and shop toolkits, which are well recognised in the sector in terms of the likely prevalence for those older people aged over 75 to wish to move and need to move into accommodation with care available on site.
Okay, so in simple terms, does this table mean that of the population that are aged 75 and over, 4% of that population will need this type of accommodation?
That's correct. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So we work on the basis of just 4% of the total population aged over 75. that may require care within an extra care, a private extra care scheme. And we consider that that rate is a suitable rate for this local authority area, based on the fact that approximately 69% of people aged over 65 own their own homes. So that's why we use the 4%, along with a number of other reasons which are set out in more detail in the full report within section 12 on page 26.
So that obviously I'll need to digest that in a bit more detail, but the 4% is maybe industry standards the wrong term, but is that kind of an accepted?
It's an accepted, and it has been used in other appeals. So we work out a gross need based on the population aged over 75, and we look at that both on the market catchment, which in this particular instance, we have worked on a 10-mile market catchment. And we also look at it on the basis of the local authority, East Cambridgeshire district. So that's the first two columns of this table. I'll come on to the third column in a moment, and that's just really an update. So we look at it on both basis of both catchments. We also then look at all private housing with care that currently exists in both those catchments. So within the market catchment, there are existing 150 units of private extra care. And in the local authority area, there are 57 existing units of private extra care. Those are all set out in more detail in Appendix E of my proof.
Okay, thank you. And so the 57, are any of those sites the local sites that have been referred to so far in Bottisham?
No, those 57 are there's only one scheme currently existing in East Cambridgeshire, and that is Rosslyn Court in Ely, which provides 57 units of private extra care.
Okay, thank you.
Just to confirm, all the existing schemes in Bottisham are all care homes. They don't fall under the same category.
No, well, that is another question. I'll leave that question for the moment and let you finish, and then I'll probably just ask a question about that as well.
Okay. Then the next row is planned supply by operational year. And the planned supply that we have assessed, and again, that's in more detail in Appendix E, where we run through all existing planning permissions or planning applications that are currently being determined in both the market catchment and the local authority area. So we consider that there are 287 units that may well come forward in the market catchment by the year of assessment in 2026.
Do we know if anything might have changed from the discussions we had yesterday? I can't recall, without going back through each individual sites. Had all the sites been factored in already?
Yes, all those sites, but those sites aren't current planning applications.
No.
There's only one that we referred to that is the subject of a current planning application, and that was the site Cherry Hinton, which was for 90 extra care units, and that actually is factored into my need analysis. I have assumed, or having looked at each of these planning applications, I think that will come forward from 2027 onwards. So whilst that one is not in this table, it will be included in the next table that I'll take you to, which projects further on from 2026.
Okay, just pausing there for a second. Mr. Phillips, I'm sure you mentioned another site, and again, I've slept, so I can't remember exactly the discussion we had. Are you happy with the table, essentially? Is that reflective of, I know the statement of common ground has set this out, it's more a case of, has anything changed in the intervening period through the discussions we've had about alternative sites?
There's a few points I'd like to raise, but I'm not really questioning the expert witness on need, etc.
Okay, that's fine. I'll leave your questions for the moment then and let Ms. Venables continue.
I think the one site that you were thinking of was the one that was mentioned yesterday at Fordham, which hasn't yet been, the application hasn't yet been made. And I would make the comment that that is not extra care housing. It falls under sheltered housing. So there are 287 units that we consider will come forward in the market catchment. And as at the date of this research, and I also double checked this earlier on this week, there are no proposed private extra care housing schemes in the local authority area. So, and just also to make the point, the scheme, the developments that may come forward in the market catchment include those that perhaps don't currently have planning permission as well. So that's my analysis of those schemes that will come forward by 2026. We then on the next row provide a figure of total supply by 2026. So for the market catchment, it includes existing operational provision and those planned units that I consider will come forward by 2026, which takes it to a total of 437. And in the local authority area, the total is the existing supply in Ely of 57 units. By deducting the existing and likely planned provision up to 2026, it then results in a net need for new extra care provision, private extra care provision of 786 units in the market catchment and 369 in the East Cambridgeshire district. Just to confirm, the final paragraph there just shows the position using the 2021 census data. At this stage, the data is still being released. We can do an analysis for East Cambridgeshire only, just to see what the difference might be. But unfortunately, the growth projections, we still have to rely on the 2018 figures. So it's really an indication, and the indication shows that even using the 2021 census, there's still a significant need of over 350 units. But it just shows you what the figures how they might change based on the new census data.
So at the very least, there's a need for 352 units.
That's correct.
Across the market catchment area, the figure's 786.
That's correct, yes. Then I think it's useful just to let you know that over the page, table T5, the purple row there shows you the same figures for 2026 as we've just run through. But the analysis also provides a current net need, which is for 336 units in the East Cambridgeshire district. And it also projects forward to 2043. And those projections include all planned and currently being determined schemes in the market catchment, which are all included in my Appendix E.
So the T5 is telling me that over time, the situation is only going to get worse based on the growth that's been applied to the population increase over time and the amount of people that are going to be over 75 and in need of this type of care. But of course, we don't know, for example, by 2033, what other planning applications might have been submitted, local plans might change by then. So they're my kind of observations on that table, but obviously it is useful. But just setting some context. If there's any comments on that, then happy to hear them.
No, that's correct. And just so you're aware, all the additional planned schemes that either have planning permission or are currently pending a decision have all been included in the year 2027. So by 2028, that's why you suddenly see a drop in the figures for the market catchment, because they've all been included there. On the assumption that
yes, on the assumption they'll get consent,
and
yes.
they will be developed, which of course. But the other thing that we don't know is that these planning applications don't usually say whether or not they are for private extra care or affordable extra care. So we always work on the basis that they will be for private, but that may change, particularly when you're looking at large schemes with extra care that's likely to be provided.
Okay, thank you. So on a similar questioning really in terms of the figures, but just my understanding of the practical realities of needing this type of accommodation, which are probably quite limited. But people who are in need of some kind of care, if these facilities aren't available, what other options are available to them? So they might, is it the case that they would receive care, potentially care at home? Would they be directed towards probably less suitable facilities, but nevertheless, they might be able to, for example, go into a care home or some other type of sheltered accommodation, which might not exactly suit their needs, but is a better alternative than living independently at home. Could you just talk me through that, please?
Yes, I think it'd be useful now to take you to the development of accommodation-based care document, which is another one provided by Cambridgeshire County Council Adult Social Care, and it's CD 4.10. Again, they unhelpfully haven't numbered the pages, but I think it's page 12. It's headed Market Trends, Our Early Predictions.
Sorry, page 12.
Page 12, internal page 12. Should be headed Market Trends, Our Early Predictions.
Yes, I have that page.
This is similar to other areas of the country, and as I say, I deal with care homes as well, so I understand that sector very, very well. Cambridgeshire County Council are stating that demand for traditional care homes will increase slightly over the next 20 years to 2040, but not at the rate we initially forecast. Existing care homes will refocus to meet complex need, for example, nursing and dementia care. The next point isn't really relevant here. The fourth point is that biggest growth in demand will be for housing with care and home care solutions. So that they are, as the adult social care providers and commissioners, they are saying that this is where the demand is going to be over the next 20 years.
So in the same the same page, there's something there which again links in with something I was going to ask about refitting existing care home stock. Has that been considered that there might be other facilities in the area which might come forwards in a different form, more suitable?
I don't think if it's an existing care home, care homes are still needed. And I'm going to take you on to another section on care homes. I think the issue with some of the older style care homes, and we're talking about sort of mamas and papas type conversions of older houses from the 1980s.
Yes, and I think actually, I'm just correcting myself, this bullet point, it means refitting existing care home stock to be more modern rather than...
That's right. That's right. It's not. I mean, there is no housing with care at the moment, and it's a different area. But on to page 15. And this just provides you with an indication of where, or the sort of percentage growth that the commissioning authority are looking at in terms of residential and nursing settings. I'm in a table with a orange top to it. How might these numbers look? They're looking at 28% of the growth being in residential and nursing care home settings. 46% of the growth, so almost half the growth within housing with care. And another quarter domiciliary care and other community solutions. So yes, you can remain in your own home if it's suitable, and receive domiciliary care in your own home. However, you have the issue then, and I know this for a fact, I work with some domiciliary care providers, that there reaches a stage where mum or dad or your loved one can no longer receive the sort of higher levels of care within their own home. And they would then need probably to move either into a residential care home or a nursing home, or they may be able to move into housing with care. But at that stage, it's probably that they're too far. The care needs are so high that it's probable that they would move straight into a care home. So the better option is to move into housing with care at a stage where your care needs are lower. You can then benefit from the facilities and the community setting in order to ensure that as your care needs increase, you can buy in increased levels of care to meet those requirements.
Okay, thank you. So a related question again, but we heard yesterday in particular about vacancies in existing stock in the village in Bottisham. And it seems to me, based on what you've just said, that type of accommodation is different. It's a different C2 use. It's a care home facility. So they're not really comparable at all. And I was going to go as far as to say, is that even relevant to my consideration in your view, because it's a different type of housing?
I don't think it's fully relevant, because the commissioning authority state that they have a need for increased levels of care home beds as well. But what they're focusing on is nursing and dementia care, because that's where they see the need in future. I have looked, and I did this at the last inquiry as well, I have looked at the occupancy levels in the 4 care homes in Bottisham. Just to explain though, one of the care homes that Dr. Keith mentioned, Eden View, is a specialist care home, and it's for younger adults with learning disabilities or an acquired brain injury. So I don't consider that is comparable at all. It's not for older people. But I've had a look at the other 3 care homes, and just to explain, care homes are registered and inspected by the Care Quality Commission, and those inspection reports usually, not always, but provide occupancy levels. They'll say this care home is registered for X number of people, and there were X number of people in that home on the day of inspection. Now, I don't know if I need to go through the names of each of the homes, but the inspections for those 3 homes, Hilton Park, Queen's Court and Oaklands, were all completed in February, March and May 2021. So that's the most recent data we have.
So what was so it's Hilton Park, Queen's Court, and what was the last one?
It's Hilton Park Nursing Home, Queen's Court Dedicated Dementia Home, and Oaklands Residential Care Home. So they all provide slightly different types of care for older people. But the inspection reports for each of them were undertaken in March, February and May 2021, respectively. And for Hilton Park, there were 74 out of 93 people occupying beds in that home, which is 80%. Queen's Court, 52 out of 55, which is 94%. And Oaklands was 50 out of 54, which is 93%. So the overall average, and I've worked that out based on total number of occupied beds out of total number of available beds, was 87%. Now that's slightly lower than the sort of maximum occupancy levels, which we would normally work to around 92%. However, it was just after COVID. So it's entirely reasonable that those occupancy levels are high, and there's no reason to suggest why they will no longer continue to be at those sorts of levels.
And is there a similar exercise being done across the market catchment or not?
No, because we're assessing a completely different sort of accommodation with care typology, and therefore I wouldn't normally do an assessment of care home beds. I've only done that because it's available. You know, anyone can go and look at those CQC inspection reports. So it's available, but it's our assessment for care home beds is completed in a different way to the assessment for private extra care.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. I think that's answered a couple of points I had. I will ask again, I'll ask the council to come in a second. However, I think I'm just returning to the point I made originally and the practical on the ground situation that people are likely faced with. So if somebody is at home and struggling and needing alternative care, at the moment, the options you've presented are that they might receive some assistance at home, but is there the potential that they would receive that assistance at home until they're in a situation where they're just no longer able to cope, and then they would move into a care home? So would the question I'm asking is, would care homes themselves cater for some of this need, albeit that it's less than ideal, I suspect, but would they address some of the need requirement over time?
You are right that people could remain at home if they chose to do so. If their needs became, or if their needs increased, and perhaps they had an issue accessing domiciliary care, or their families were concerned whether those carers were turning up at the right time and providing the right sort of assistance, at the moment, they would need to move into a residential care home. However, the whole reason Cambridge County Council are trying to move away from placing people in care homes is because of the expense. Care homes are significantly more expensive because you're paying on a weekly basis for your care, and you're paying for 24-hour care than downsizing or right-sizing, buying your apartment or accommodation within an extra care scheme, and then buying in care as required and to meet your specific level of need.
Okay, so that's the question I was going to, and I kind of asked this question already, and you've answered it on a local level, but is there capacity in care homes in any event to accommodate the need? And I understand that there's obviously shortcomings in that approach from the proofs that you've submitted, but is there capacity within the existing C2 care home infrastructure to accommodate the needs?
The answer to that question is no. There wouldn't be sufficient capacity to accommodate all those needs going forward. But I'd like to take you to the Adult Social Care Reform White Paper, which is called People at the Heart of Care. And that's CD 4.12.
Yes, I have that document.
I've just lost it. Now, this was only completed at the end of 2021, so it's fairly new. Paragraph 4.6, which is page 34.
Yes, I have that page as well. Thank you.
Yeah, here we are. And I think the end of that paragraph is the most important. It starts a lack, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines up. A lack of suitable housing options results in too many people staying in hospital unnecessarily or moving to residential care prematurely, even if that is not what they want, instead of recovering at their own home. And by their own home, if you're moving to housing with care, that is your own home. You are downsizing into your own home, and that's a very important area. The whole reason the Adult Social Care White Paper is looking at the whole reason for the paper is to look at alternatives to moving into a care home.
Okay, thank you. I'll pause there. Can I ask the council if they'd like to make any comments in terms of what's been said so far? Any observations or?
If I may, that would be very appreciated. If I start with Mrs. Venable's appendices, and some of this is just to get clarification from myself potentially. On page 18 of that appendix.
Sorry, which document are we on?
Mrs. Venable's proof. I can't remember the document number off the top of my head. The appendix.
Yes, okay, thanks.
Page 18.
It's just one, isn't it?
It's in one document in mine, but it might be.
I've got it, 18, page 18 of 55, and it's blue tab at the top with lots of catchment areas and private unit numbers. Who would let me know if they've got to that page?
Oh, that's, yeah.
You there? Sorry, yeah. Just a question for you, Sir Inspector. A lot of all these private unit numbers that are highlighted are 47, 46, and then in our council catchment area is 57. And they're described as extra care housing. So this is the same as I understand the Bottisham appeal as extra care housing units. If you then go through all the grey numbers going down from the top, you've got 70, 30, 40, 51, 46, 40, 87, 27, 21, 34, 24, and then now catchment area 35, 65, 87, there was a note, and 27. None of those go above the 100 unit number that the appellant is relying on. So I'm slightly confused of why, you know, obviously this private is meeting need from what's been discussed, and yet it's obviously much smaller than what is considered to be the minimal need to be an extra care housing unit. I'd also point out, obviously, the Roslyn Court site, which is highlighted there, is in Ely, and obviously Ely has access to, and to clarify elements of raised earlier, things such as gyms, nail bars. So obviously it's a much more sustainable location with easy access to many facilities and services. So obviously it doesn't need it in-house. People can get to it relatively easy in walking distances.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Yeah, could you come back on that point, and in particular the discussion about the quantum? But what I think the proof sets out how many units are needed to make this scheme a viable extra care village, I think is a retirement village. Could you just explain that, please?
Yes, it's fairly simple to explain. This particular appendix, as you look at on the page before, it's an assessment of total supply of housing with care in the Market Catchment and East Cambridgeshire District Local Authority area, split between affordable and private provision. Now, the left-hand column, total unit numbers, that column is all affordable provision. So the reason that that those schemes can be smaller or are smaller is because the whole concept of housing with care, extra care, has been around for probably 20-25 years now, but it originally started as being an affordable only option, in that people living in affordable or social housing would be moved into affordable housing with care schemes because it was cheaper for the local authority to fund their care in those schemes than it was to move them into a care home. So you will find smaller schemes, and the other point to make is that in those schemes, it's very, very likely that the level of facilities and the level of care being provided perhaps may not be 24-hour complete care on site, and some of those affordable options have perhaps had to reduce those levels of care, and they will have a very limited amount of facilities. The right-hand column shows you the total number of private existing private schemes, and the scheme in Ely, Roslyn Court, that we mentioned earlier, together with the other two schemes, tend to be more urban type developments, higher rise, that are almost more sheltered housing in their original approach, being smaller schemes with full-time care, but the level of facilities within those developments will be much lower than they would be within a full retirement care village. I think You mentioned actually it earlier, sir, that the ARCO, the Associated Retirement Community Operators pictogram is really quite useful to sort of show the difference between those schemes. That's CD 4.11. And it's also within my proof of evidence, but it's easier to read in the ARCO report. It's a report called Putting the Care in Housing with Care, and it's on page 5 of that report. If you concentrate on the middle column, which is housing with care, ARCO provide a description of integrated retirement communities, which can also be known as extra care or retirement villages. But just to give you an understanding of the situation with those sorts of schemes, they offer self-contained homes for sale, shared ownership or rent. So some can be for rent if they are tend to be affordable options, although there are some private rent schemes now coming through as well. But in order to provide the level of facilities on site, then there needs to be an economy of scale in terms of the numbers of units. And the 24-hour on-site staff, optional care or domiciliary services available, restaurant, cafe available for meals, and then typical facilities. There's a long list there, which is very similar to that I ran through earlier for the subject scheme. And they state at the bottom typically 60 to 250 homes. So our scheme isn't at the top end by any means. However, I think the typically 60 is really on the low side. Now, I'm not aware of any new schemes coming forward that are really below 60 units, and many tend to be more towards 80 nowadays.
Okay, so on that point, which is similar to the council's point on that they've just made on this, looking at that table, clearly the IRCs have got integrated facilities. Is the option to pursue an IRC dependent on location? So, for example, if you had things on the doorstep, you had hairdressers within close proximity of a site, you had a restaurant, cafe, other things, would that influence the type of accommodation you would choose to site in that location? Could it be argued that an independent IRC could take on a more flexible form insofar as there would be facilities available on the doorstep of a site? So therefore it wouldn't need to be integrated within the actual confines of the site itself because they're already within close proximity.
It's a consideration, but I think of all the schemes that I'm aware of, the vast majority would want all those facilities on site, because the whole reason that you choose to downsize is because you're moving to a scheme where there are a huge number of benefits in terms of what is available on site. And I think anyone's families would be a little bit concerned if they thought mum was going to wander off down the road or travel to lots of different amenities that aren't available on site. I think the whole reason to move is because you've got everything on one site.
So on that basis, as you've put in your proof 7.8, the IRCs therefore fall within the upper end of the scale because you need the number of people there in order to support these different facilities. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Any comments on that, Mr. Phillips?
The only thing again, potentially, first of all, correction, the total units number on that page 18 of 55 doesn't define it's affordable. It just says that's the total number of units. And then the second bit is the proportion of those that are private. So I'm taking that is the 69 units, for instance, the second one down, the 69 units in total.
That's South Drive, Newmarket.
And then 46 of those would be market. And then obviously then the Roslyn Court, which is the first bold one under East Cams, is 57 total, and all of those are private.
Yes, so I think, well, you can help me out, but I think the left-hand side's a total number, so 46, so for example, the South Drive Newmarket, 46 are private and the remainder are
The
affordable.
remainder are affordable. The whole reason for undertaking this analysis was to show how the existing supply in both the market catchment and more particularly in the East Cambridgeshire district is currently biased towards the provision of local authority affordable extra care. And it was just really to make the point that currently in the market catchment, only 15.1% of the total provision is private. And in the local authority area, only 21% of existing provision is private when older home ownership levels are around 69%. In fact, with the most of the recent census shows that figure has increased to more like 73%.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Again, question, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like Mrs. Venables is questioning the methodology the developers put forward, because there's elements there like smaller units, smaller size schemes can come forward. And why many schemes might need to be on that sort of larger scheme, it doesn't mean it has to be on that larger size. It's therefore possible that smaller schemes could come forward and still be this sort of extra care, integrated retirement care sort of scheme.
Would you like to come back on that, Ms. Venables?
Yes, as stated from PPG and also in this document, the larger integrated retirement community schemes, you would normally need a large scheme in order to provide the sorts of facilities that are being provided on site here. Otherwise, it's more of just an extra care development rather than an integrated retirement community.
Again, I would just note the word used was normally, not essential on that.
Yes, okay, Mr. Phillips, thank you.
And I've got your questions when you're ready.
Sorry.
I have a few other questions.
Yes, of course, if you'd like to direct them towards me, and yes, if you'd like to continue with the questioning.
Thank you, sir. The other thing I would like to raise, and it's in my appendix, it's the committee report, which I can take you to if you want. It's appendix 1 in my proof. If you go to the committee report on, let me just check the page, page 23 of agenda item 7. Cambridgeshire County Council, in dealing with care homes, seem to be showing doubts that this scheme is required in this location. As it says, the demand profile is care homes do not indicate a need for additional capacity for care home beds. It then goes on in quite some detail, going through the details that are required. And Bottisham has not been highlighted as an area where significant population growth is expected. There is already considerable provision of residential care in the village, and additional provision has potential to exacerbate staffing care in the village. So the point, first of all, is the point that County Council seem to be not supporting or the need for this scheme in this location. And then secondly, they are also suggesting that if this was approved, it would actually harm potentially the care that can be provided in the alternative, the other care homes within the village, as they would not be able to recruit sufficient staff to provide high levels of care needed.
So can I just lean in on that just to start with? What we're obviously very keen to understand from the council is what the council's case against our scheme is. Insofar as need, we've got a statement of common ground identifying what the need is. We don't have any locational objection in terms of accessibility to services and the like from the council. I hope there's not a rowing back here by the council, somehow saying this is locationally inappropriate on account of need. We've got the growth to HOU 6 point coming up, of course, but I don't understand the council to be saying that there isn't a need for this scheme per se. Separate point, staffing we can cover off separately, but I just want to get that out of the way because if we're looking to unpick statements of common ground, we're in a very dark world.
No, well, obviously we don't want to be,
No.
I mean, Mr. Phillips, I will ask for the council's position on this. However, I do note that Dr. Keith did raise similar concerns about the pressure on existing services within Bottisham. So, yes.
It's this first point about then the county. Seems to be that this council is pointing to another council's view as to whether there's a need. For the scheme. If the council is rowing back on what's said in the statement of common ground, we need to know about that, and that could have fundamental issues for how this inquiry goes.
Yes, Mr. Phillips,
Yeah.
can you just clarify?
I'm not doubting the need that Mrs. Venables has put forward. I believe that the 369 or 352, I forgot which one it is, but I think that is probably a reasonable need assessment of what the district needs. I've got no evidence to suggest otherwise. It was just Mrs. Venables saying how county council has been, the needs that county council coming forward in her earlier statements. And I was just bringing to attention to you, sir, that in county council response to us, that wasn't what county council were telling this council. However, this council is basically saying there is a need as 369, 352. So, yeah.
The parameters and the methodology is part of the common ground. The geographical areas are the needs based on the market catchment, which is 7 miles, I think, from the site and the district. So that's what's agreed in the statement of common ground.
Yeah, so no question over the fundamental need.
You've had the answer, and as you've recorded already, that's apples and pears to some extent because there's care homes. So it's not a question of there being something in Bottisham that caters for the need. There isn't. In terms of this wider point about exacerbating staffing and recruitment pressures, obviously we can pass that down the line, but what you haven't got is any evidence to back up that assertion. And insofar as this council is putting it forward as a reason to oppose the scheme, that it's something that might be harmful, it would obviously be up to the council to put forward some evidence to support that.
Thank you. So would you like to take the point that was actually raised by Dr. Keith in terms of, and it's highlighted in the CCC's response to the Planning Application Committee report in relation to the pressures on staffing issues in relation to other care homes within Bottisham?
Yes, I'd like to draw your attention to the ARCO report, putting the care in housing with care, 4.11, CD 4.11. I'll take you to page 3, if that's okay. And it's section 3, top left. This really runs through staffing for care villages. And I think it's important to say that if you have carers, domiciliary carers, who are working within the local community, going to older people's homes, which are disparate around the local community, there will be significantly more care hours than required than servicing people's needs within a care community where they are all available or located on one site. And this research, which was completed on behalf of ARCO, the Association of Retirement Community Operators, just sets out that due to integrated retirement communities reducing care needs for up to 20% of residents, the number of care hours is cut by approximately 13,500 per year for a scheme of 200 residents. With the Home Care Association calculating that 16% of a typical hour of domiciliary care is spent on travel time and mileage, a further saving of approximately 10,700 hours per year is also made due to the closer proximity of residents. And it then goes on to say if the sector achieves its aim of 250,000 people living in integrated retirement communities by 2030, these reductions in care hours mean 20,000 fewer care staff are needed compared to providing domiciliary care in the same number of people to the same number of people in the community. So there are benefits to staffing, and I think the other point I would make is that the fact that there are care staff on site and older people feel less anxious and have a better sense of well-being means that they are less likely to resort to either phoning the GP surgery or going for a consultation with the GP, because they have people on site who are meeting their care needs, and they would therefore ask them those questions potentially. I'm not suggesting all questions, but that also serves to reduce the number of care hours required from the NHS as well, and that's another benefit that I can run through in a moment.
Yes, I think the question really, again, from Dr. Keith was, or the observation was more about immediate pressures on staff. So are there enough staff to go around? I don't know if there are differences between the type of staff you would recruit for this facility in comparison with a care home. Any observations on that point?
In terms of care staff, yes, they would be similar members of staff to those being employed within a residential care home. However, it's for the operator to ensure that sufficient staff are available to meet the needs of those people as and when the scheme would open. And also to meet the requirements set out by the Care Quality Commission that appropriate numbers of staff with appropriate qualifications are available on site at all times. There would also be support staff available who wouldn't necessarily be the same type of staff that would be employed within residential care homes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Phillips, I'm hoping to move on. Is there anything any comments you'd like to make on the points that have been raised?
One more point on that, then it's very quick, is in the agreed statement of common ground about the limitation of the workforce. I only ever said it's potential moderates because I'm not an expert in how you provide care on site, how you employ those sort of carers, and I was going off what the county council had said as a care provider and the concerns they had raised. As I am taken, they are an expert in that field.
So you'll have to direct me.
So on my appendix 1,
It's page 23 of the Statement of Common Ground, which is a table summarising what weight the parties give. Yeah.
Yes, okay. That's fine, thanks.
Right. And then the last point I was going to raise is, this may be my confusion, is on the Fordham application, which is I-10. Which is for specialist bungalows, age restriction of over 60, with the 24-hour care being provided on site. This is very similar in how care is provided from what I'm taking it as the Bottisham appeal, which is essentially my confusion on this, is that as care needs increase, the partner of this applicant, Oak Retirement, as detailed in the email sent by Simon Westray, in his red letter commentary to my questions. Where he states, all homes come with 24-hour monitoring alarm and a site manager warden, non-CQC registered, to be fair, on site, who will be available to assist residents with any issues. For those residents that require additional care, the Sage House Living Domiciliary Care Package will be made available via the applicant's care partner, Oak Retirement. And that to me sounds very similar to how the C2 operates, as you're coming in with the sort of low levels of care, and then you can buy additional care as your care needs increase. It's just on a much smaller scale, and this is something offers individual dwellings outside of the C2 use, while the Bottisham Appeal site is dwellings within the retirement care village C2. But both have the idea is private homes within a setting of care.
Okay, I mean, Ms. Venables, it's not a valid application. Yes, if you'd like to respond to that, are there any parallels between?
Yes, I can respond to that. I think you've just been reading through the email, which is the red writing on the email. But I've taken a full look through the planning statement, and at page 13 of that planning statement, it states at paragraph 5.11. Oak Retirement will contract with a local CQC registered care provider to offer personal care to those residents who wish to access such services and will arrange housekeeping when requested. Now, that isn't on-site care. That is no different to me in my own home seeking domiciliary care from a local domiciliary care provider. And I return to the points that I've made previously. This is an application for sheltered housing, whereby the manager or warden on site can assist in buying in care for those people on site if they require it, but it is not on-site registered domiciliary care. And that is the difference between sheltered housing and housing with care, where there is care available on site.
Yeah, the only point I was going to say, I'm not looking at this as a site specific, it's the more how care can be provided in alternative ways. And going from page 13 to page 14, just to give the full picture, there is living care that can be offered. So that's a one-to-one specialist 24-hour care while staying in their own home. That's obviously a very high level of care that can be provided on site.
Okay, Ms. Venables, does this come back trying to kind of cut through without getting embroiled in too much of a disagreement on this point? Does this not come back to the table, which is in the proof, which is 4.5 of your proof, where it sets out that's different types of accommodation? We've already discussed the IRC, and this one would be the left-hand column. Is that your position?
That's correct. It's sheltered housing, and anyone can buy in 24-hour care into their own home with someone living in their own home. But this particular scheme is sheltered housing, and in fact that point is made in the pre-act response from East Cambridgeshire, and I don't have a page number, but it's one of those.
So just taking that one step further, if that was approved and it was built out very quickly, that wouldn't make a contribution to the need?
No, it would not.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions from me.
Okay, thanks. I do realise time is moving on, and I know I've spent some time on this, but I'm just trying to absolutely understand the need position given the circumstances of the appeal, and that most of the very special circumstances are largely based on this. So I have only a couple of more observations to make and questions on the need. And then we do need to do heritage as well. So we might have a lunch break, come back for heritage. Before I break for lunch, I'll have a look at the timetable and seek views from the parties on if it's achievable that we can really do cross-examination in a few hours. And it seems to me it might be difficult, but we'll leave that there for the moment. Just to finish off then, sorry, I'm just reading through my notes because they've been answered ad hoc as we've gone along. So yes, okay. So I think probably the final question actually, or final discussion. The CQC registration, in practical terms, what does that mean? Does that alter the way that care is delivered? And does that have any effect on existing facilities such as a GP surgery or the health facilities? Are there any implications of CQC registration?
If care is provided, i.e. a domiciliary care provider, it needs to be registered by the CQC. So a housing with care scheme, such as this integrated retirement community, will have a Care Quality Commission registered domiciliary care provider that is based on site and can answer any emergency calls, but also provide contracted care during the week, which may be for 15 minutes, half an hour, or an hour each day to residents within the scheme. In terms of GPs, then care provision provided on site does not provide GP care unless the operator chooses to utilise a specific GP that would be able to make use of the consulting rooms that will be available within the health and wellbeing facilities. But that's obviously for the operator to negotiate GP provision for those people living on site, if they want to do that, or for residents to choose their own local GP. The important point to make is that these residents coming to the scheme aren't just being magicked up from anywhere. The majority of them will be local to the scheme already, and therefore be able to make use of either their existing GP providers or choose to go elsewhere.
Yes, and on that point, will incoming residents be local to the scheme? And could you just point me in where that evidence is, please?
Yes, Carterwood, the company that I work for, completed research with ARCO back a few years ago. And we've actually got a copy of that research, which is included as part of my my appendices. Appendix.
I probably don't need to read the
yeah.
document in detail, but if you could just summarise what that says and how you've taken that into account.
Appendix C is a focus document called Extra Care Housing, where do residents come from? And we looked at around 90 extra care housing schemes across England and Wales to understand how far people travel. And the sort of headline figure is that the average miles travelled to any scheme is approximately 3 miles. However, when you look deeper, it depends on the quality of the scheme, whether it's in an urban or rural location, the accessibility to that scheme, and whether or not it's a leasehold or affordable development as well. But just to provide some other figures, 39% come from within 3 miles, and approximately 70% will come from within 10 miles. The rest of the residents are likely to come from further afield, perhaps because they want to move closer to children or to relatives or to family, but vice versa. There will be people in East Cambridgeshire that will also do the same and be moving to Scotland or Devon or wherever it might be in order to move closer to their family as well. But the general figure is that about 70% will come from within 10 miles.
Okay, thank you. My next point we might be able to deal with quickly. It depends on the appellant's position, really, because I haven't seen the latest Section 106 agreement. So yesterday, again, we discussed the consultation response in relation to the contribution required to mitigate the effects on the local GP surgery. Could you just outline your position in relation to that? Are you proposing a contribution?
Yes, so what's happened is the 106, like last time, offers a contribution, but our position is it's not necessary. And like last time, as the inspector found, we'll invite you to conclude the same, hence a blue pencil. But obviously, if you're against us on that, then there is the contribution as requested. Okay,
so it's probably best to leave that until the planning obligations session. And with that being said, I don't have any further questions, observations to make. Mr. Phillips?
Nothing else from me. Thank you.
Okay, and just to say, Ms. Venables, I know you've been sat there for some time now. Thank you for your contributions to the inquiry. So it's nearly 1 o'clock. I think we need to break for lunch now. We'll come back at 2 o'clock. This afternoon, we are going to finish off. Quickly looking through my questions, because I have a statement of common ground on heritage, I don't anticipate, and I use the word anticipate, it taking too long. So we should be able to get through that fairly quickly. And there aren't any other observations I have to make on other matters. It will be then over to cross-examination. We can just look at the timetable quickly. And if the advocates could perhaps help me out here. So if we come back at 2, let's just say for the sake of argument, it's 2:30 by the time we get round to hearing from witnesses.
So if it helps you, I think I'll be 15 minutes in chief with Mr. Phillips.
Okay.
And up to an hour because it's only Mr. Brown.
So with a break and then re-examination to factor in. So if we call it an hour and a half. Okay, and I don't want to put you under undue pressure. It's just to get an indication as to whether we need to change the timetable.
Sure, I don't think we do, sir. I would try to broadly mirror that. We might be a little bit longer in evidence in chief. I might be a little bit longer depending on how crisp the answers are from Mr. Phillips. But it's that I still feel, depending on what time we have to be out of the room and depending on how people are flagging, there's a good chance of getting through today. But if there's any reason not to, then of course we've got enough flex in the timetable to come back tomorrow. The only thing about that would be, I think we would then have to find another day for closings, or at the very slot in a site view to give us time to finish off closings.
Yes, I mean, we could, depending on availability, we could do closings on first thing on Friday morning, but I don't know if that's something you'd be open to. The 3 hours this afternoon, so let's just assume the cross-examination and evidence in chief is altogether 3 hours. Well, that will take us to 5:30. That's without a break. It seems quite tight to me, just based on kind of initial observations. But I don't really want a witness to give half evidence and then be left overnight either. So I think we'll just have to take it as it comes and see how it transpires after the first witness.
Absolutely. So we can easily, I agree totally, we shouldn't split, and we shouldn't, I think, even have evidence in chief one afternoon and come back. So if we get through Mr. Phillips and it's looking in any way tight for Mr. Brown, then we should stop, and then we could do that in the morning, and then we still got the site view timetabled in, and then yes, we could either do closings after the site view if people want to come back, or Friday morning.
Yes, okay. Is that okay with? Yes, okay, right. We'll break now then. We'll come back we'll have an hour because it's been quite a long morning. We'll come back at 2 o'clock. So the inquiry is adjourned.